Hello everyone and welcome to episode 6 of the Bristol 24/7 Queer Catch-Up. My name is Kit and my pronouns are they, them and theirs.
And my name's Lowie and my pronouns are also they, them and theirs.
We're going to be diving headfirst into the biggest queer stories of the week, but first, here's the rundown. The anti-trans group, the LGB Alliance, has been granted charity status by the UK Charity Commission, despite it being considered a hate group by many LGBTQ people and organisations. Many have criticised the move, including trans charity Mermaids, who said, "We consider this decision by the Charity Commission to be a reckless and damaging act of betrayal to transgender and gender-diverse people and our allies." The UK government has disbanded its LGBT advisory panel amidst rumours of a hostile Tory environment and various failings against LGBTQ+ people. The announcement follows 3 members of the panel quitting in March after the conversion therapy ban was delayed. Vermont has become the 13th US state to ban the gay or trans panic legal defence for murder. The legal defence tactic has long been used to justify murder because a killer believes their victim to be queer. Although activists are celebrating the ruling, many note that 37 US states still allow the use of this legal defence. That's the rundown. You're up to date. Hello! How are we all doing today?
Oh, I'm alright. I mean, the sun is out, which just seems like a miracle at this point. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, again, the sun is out, which is glorious, even though it's been, snowing on and off for the past couple of weeks, which is weird and not at all concerning on a climate change, existential kind of weird freak out level.
Yeah, I feel like I have so much, only so much brain space for, so much. It's been snowing, Prince Philip has died, which is, its own whole thing. The GRA stuff has been happening. Generally the world is happening. The Tories are continuing to be Tories. My brain is just overwhelmed. So, the fact that it's a Friday and the sun is out, something I am incredibly grateful for.
Yeah, I think sunshine does, make such a difference to mood and things, and it does make it a lot easier to kind of cope with things. So, here's the thing, gang. This week, we haven't had a lot of queer news going up. We'll be honest here, because there has been so much other stuff dominating the news cycle in terms of Prince Philip passing and things surrounding that, and then also there have been some things coming out of America in terms of the killings of the innocent black people in a way that is horrifying, and all these things have been dominating the news cycle and also, dominating our brain space. So a lot of queer news hasn't really been coming up and coming out. Apart from one thing that I actually read this morning, that already, despite the fact we're only midway through April, it's April 16th at the time of recording, 2021 in the US has broken records in terms of anti-trans bills that are going through in the US. And it's only April, which is, not great. So, yeah, there hasn't been a huge amount of, queer news, certainly in terms of in, Bristol and local area. Lowie, would you like to explain what we're going to do today? The 2 things we are going to do this morning.
So, occasionally in a podcast episode you'll hear us be like, the GRA, the Gender Recognition Act, that is its whole other thing. We will not go into that now because we could talk about that for days. Well, today is the day. We're going to talk about the Gender Recognition Act. So going to talk about that a little bit more in depth, and then it's going to be really exciting because later we've got the amazing Travis Alabanza coming on to chat with us. And they are wonderful, lovely, and they're talking to us because of their latest show, Overflow, is coming to Bristol Vic online. So going to get to chat to them for a little bit. So it's a little bit of a different episode this week, but it means we finally get to talk about the Gender Recognition Act and we don't have to just keep referencing it and being like, GRA, that's well annoying. And we get to speak to the wonderful Travis.
So this is really, really cool that we get to chat to Travis Alabanza. That is just beyond awesome, and we've been like hyped about this for weeks now. So very exciting, and also, yeah, I think chatting about the Gender Recognition Act, because it has recently come into the news. I mentioned on last week's sort of rundown that the cost of applying for a gender recognition certificate has gone down to about £5 from, I think it was 140 quid before that, which in of itself is great. But I think, I mean, we assume that a lot of our sort of demographic in terms of our audience is trans, so probably knows about this, but there are probably, I mean, we hope that there are, you know, cis people, hetero people as well, you know, people outside of our community who are maybe listening to this and don't know a lot about what the Gender Recognition Act is, and the great, you know, the good things about it and the not so great things about it. It's mostly not great things, but
yeah.
So, yeah, we thought we'd take a minute and talk about this, because it's something that affects both Lowie and I on quite a personal level, well, on a very personal level, because, you know, we are trans people. Do you want to sort of give kind of the Cliff Notes version of, you know, of what the GRA is?
I will do my best. The Gender Recognition Act is how trans people will sort of change their gender legally in the eyes of the law, the eyes of the UK government. So say you were assigned female at birth, for example, I am, it would be, if I was a trans man, changing that so it was a man on all legal documents. But it does mean that there is a legalised process to have to go through to ensure that you're seen, you know, even on things such as like doctor's records, like your passport more obviously, but lots of little bits and bobs that you probably don't think about off the top of your head, to be seen as like your legal gender. And then also another big thing about it is just that it's very binary. So it'll be like great for people who are transitioning from, you know, being assigned female at birth to a trans man and vice versa, but it isn't great for other gender diverse people. But basically it's a way of changing all your documentation to actually have your real gender instead of the sex you're assigned at birth in it.
Yeah, so it's I think Lowie summed it up really, really well there. It is a whole process that you have to go through. And I think a lot of people's issue with it is, as well, it's very medicalized in a lot of ways. Sorry, I just put up the Wikipedia page for it, and it says, like, enables transsexual people to receive... That's not really a term we use anymore, is it?
Fuck Wikipedia, man. Maybe, like...
Maybe I should go in and change that. I mean, we can edit it. You know, we can edit Wikipedia. That's the whole point.
I'm not a transsexual. I mean, I am, but I'm not.
Actually, I think there is a thing where some people... There is a sort of proportion of people who prefer transsexual to transgender because they're like, I've always been this gender. It's just my sex. So I think there is one of these things. Okay, so the reason I was trying to pull it up is I was trying to see the process. So what you have to do is you go in front of something called Gender Recognition Panel. So first of all, you have to have like a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria. If you're married, your spouse has to give consent, which creates issues because then people can become trapped in like abusive marriages potentially. As well, the problem with like the Gender Recognition Panel is it's like medical and legal experts, and they determine based on evidence that you've spent a couple of years in what they refer to as your acquired gender. So if you were assigned female at birth and were a trans man, you'd have to provide sort of evidence that you spent, I'm pretty sure it's 2 years that they say, like in your assigned gender, acquired gender, sorry. So here's sort of the problem with that. These are people who have never met you and have not been involved in your care at all. And the amount of documentation you have to provide and show is really, really tricky. And also, then we get to the issue of sometimes they sort of see, like, oh, if not all trans people want to medically transition. Like, not all trans people, including some binary trans people, not all of them, like, want to go on hormones or want to have surgery. So, and that sort of, like, medicalizing of it makes it difficult for that subsection of people to legally change their gender marker. And then also, even for people that do want to go on hormones and, have surgery and go through that sort of process, they, because of the stupid long waiting times in this country, you've got barriers there. And then here is the big issue. Like Lowie mentioned, as non-binary people, we are not recognised on this. We are not recognised in this act. We can't have legal recognition as our gender, and that is frustrating. What's more frustrating about it, and I'm aware that I'm talking a lot, so I'm going to pass this over in a minute, is that we were promised a couple of years back that this law was going to be completely redone. And then after a couple of years of delaying, that didn't happen. That we were told, no. The only change that's really come through is the cost thing. The cost of it going down, which in of itself is good. But that's like...
very small.
I was going to say that's the bare minimum, but it's not even that. Right?
And I think it's, for trans people, I think we talk about it a lot on this podcast because it's a big part of our identities, but also because there's been a lot of work to continue, it's a continuing battle, but to get equality for sexualities, and so like people can love whoever they want, and it's still an ongoing process, but it's something that's come in leaps and bounds over the past couple of decades. It now feels like trans people, they're now the ones making that fight, like gay rights, like queer rights in that regard, as in like loving who you want and all of that side of things is starting to make real big leaps and bounds and have legal recognition. And we see it in the Marriage Equality Act, and it's making big leaps and bounds, but trans people are now kind of where gay people were 20, 30, 40 years ago. We're now having to have those legal fights. And the reason I think we talk a lot about trans issues on this is because of that, and because we are still having to fight to get basic rights. And we are two trans non-binary people, but there are so many others, and so many people that aren't non-binary, who are just gender diverse in so many different ways. And it's, I could say it till, I'm blue in the face, but trans rights are human rights, and we deserve to have recognition. So the reason we don't shut up about it, and the reason this Gender Recognition Act is so frustrating, and the reason it's so frustrating to have to keep protesting to like even be able to use the bathroom, is because it feels like you're doing what gay people had to do 30 years ago, and we should be able to live our lives.
Yeah. This is the thing as well. I mean, I saw a tweet, which I'm actually just going to pull up now. Again, saw a tweet on Instagram, which I've definitely said before, but that's just 2021. That's how we do things now. I see most of my tweets on Instagram because Twitter is too exhausting, frankly.
Twitter is something else, isn't it?
Twitter really is something else, yeah.
I congratulate anyone that stays on that platform for more than, 2 minutes at a time, because it's a time.
Put it this way. I use Twitter to promote and connect on a professional level. I just try to use Twitter like LinkedIn these days. Like, I can't do more than that. Like, and a lot of the time it's actually kind of like good things. It's people, because as well, a lot of the things I follow are about like autism and things like that, because, that's a big part of my life. And people, like fighting for autistic rights and things. And even though, what you're seeing is people being like really positive and really proud in who they are, but having to fight. It's like just the reminder of the fight is so tiring. So what I've seen is it's a couple of tweets from Jeffrey Marsh, who they're a really awesome non-binary person doing really, really awesome things. They tweeted, "I think it's hard to understand the psychological and spiritual weight of being trans in a world where everyone feels entitled, encouraged even, to weigh in on whether we should exist. That part is not easy." Second tweet, "Sports, bathrooms, whatever the hot topic is, it always seems to come down to trying to make us disappear or wishing that we would." And it is frustrating because there are other countries... Okay, put it this way. Okay, so for people who don't know, the process for legally changing your name, regardless of if this is a gender thing or just, hey, I want to change my name, right? The process for doing that is literally you have a document that's a declaration, which, here's the thing, when I did mine, I downloaded one off the internet for free. Like, free deed poll. You can do it, and that's totally legal and totally fine as long as you're using the right legal wording and declaration, and you have two people witnessing you sign it. And you just basically say, I revoke my use of this name. From henceforth, I will be known as this name. And, you have two people witness that and sign that. And that's all you need to do, and then you just show that piece of paper to your bank, to wherever. It's been a pain in the butt trying to get it changed in my medical records, but that's a whole other thing. You show it to wherever, to your job, to your bank, to your what the hell ever. And then that's your name change. There are a lot of countries in the world, there are quite a few places in the world where that's all you need to do to legally change your gender marker. Mm-hmm. You do something similar to that, basically saying like, okay, I revoke my assigned gender at birth from henceforth, like I legally declare myself to be that. It's just like a legal declaration. Or you stand up in front of a solicitor and just say like, I keep gesturing because I keep forgetting that when this goes out, like this is just going to be sound, which you'd think after this long of being trained in audio I wouldn't do, but I gesticulate. Or as my mum calls it, testiculate, which is when you wave your arms around and talk bollocks.
Hey!
Finger guns. And like I say, we're just talking about frustration here. And it's the fact that we were told, oh, things are going to change. Like, we're just going to go to a, like, self-identification type vibe, where you just need to, like, sign a legal declaration in the same way you would when you change your name. We were told that, like, pending the GRE consultation, which, actually, Lo, do you want to explain the consultation thing that happened a couple of years ago?
I don't know if I know enough. I might have to look it up. Hang on.
Okay. Yeah, but we were told, like, pending this consultation, that we'd, these are the things that would happen, and then things would be rolled back and rolled back. Things were rolled back and rolled back, and it feels like we were lied to.
Yeah.
Well, we were lied to, actually.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, like, I say, it feels like that. Yeah, you know why it feels like that? Because we were.
Yeah. And I think as trans people, we have to exert a lot of patience. Whether that's patience with family and friends, and being like, it's okay, I know it can be difficult to use pronouns that aren't she and he, apparently, or like, with employers, with like having to go to doctors and hear your dead name come up every single time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't even go into like being harassed on the street or like being told, like yelled at to get out of a bathroom that people don't think, you belong in, or like happen to see on the daily the like streams and streams of transphobia that exist in this country and around the world. So then to also try and be patient about the fact that people are protesting our existence, are lying to us, and are continuing to stop us having easy access to just live as who we want to live as, is just incredibly frustrating. And there was another sentence I was going to say and it's gone. So it was going to be powerful, but we don't have it anymore. So there we go.
Speaking of being harassed on the street, what? This is weird and stupid. When I think about it, this is like deeply weird and concerning, but you have to take your wins where you can get them. So a little while back, I went out. I was dressed pretty masculine, you know, binding, short sleeved shirt up to the collar, shorts, beautiful summer day, was walking along. Someone yelled out of their car as they were driving past. They yelled a certain queer slur beginning with F, right, at me. And my first thought was, oh God, you know, that was awful. That was really upsetting. That was awful. But my second thought was, well, I mean, that's a slur that's quite traditionally used for, like, dudes. Like, for people perceived as male. That means that person saw me as male. You know, saw me as masculine, saw me as male. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I get the same thing. Like, people will use those sort of slurs against me. I'm like, that's a slur, but at least it's a masculine slur. Yeah. And, like, we're sort of kind of, like, half smiling about this, because you gotta take your wins where you can get them. Mm-hmm. But also, like, I hope that someday in, like, you know, 5-10 years, you or I, or someone else is going to listen to this and hear us talking about this, and is going to go, oh my God, it is horrible that they had to do that, that they had to, like, deal with that in that way just to survive. Like, you know, I hope that people are going to look back at this and be fucking horrified. Yeah. In a lot of ways. Like, yeah, and, like, I think the reason we talk about this a lot, but, like, there are so many reasons we talk about it a lot, but it's because of those queer and gay and lesbian and bisexual people that came before us to let us love who we want to love. And although that's not perfect, we're getting there, especially legally. The reason I think we shout so much about trans rights and trying to get stuff such as the Gender Recognition Act reformed is because we think of the trans kids that will come after us. Like, we are living the life we're living, and we're thankful to, like, be as okay as we are because of the trans people that came before us and because of the queer people that came before us. You know, like, sometimes we have an obligation to continue to, like, we have a platform, we have a podcast, we need to talk about it. Yeah. Shall I also talk about the Gender Recognition Act consultation? Yeah, please do. So, over the past couple of years, the UK government has been consulting a consultation to kind of see what people thought about the Gender Recognition Act. And more than 100,000 people and organisations responded back in 2018, and most of them did support the reform of the GRA, because I don't think everyone here is a TERF, you know, a trans exclusion radical feminist, if you've never heard that beautiful term before. But nearly 2/3 called for the requirement of a diagnosis of gender dysphoria to be removed. 4 in 5 people supported the removal of the requirement for a medical report detailing all treatment. Nearly 4 in 5 called for the removal of the requirement for individuals to provide evidence of having lived as their acquired gender for a period of time. And 5 in 6 people called for the removal of the requirement that a married trans person must obtain consent from their spouse. Like, it was overwhelmingly in support. Yeah. And that was a UK-wide consultation. It's not like it was just lobbied by trans groups. That's a phrase I see floating around, that, like, it's just like the trans were just signing that all, and I'm like, yeah, if they were, it's because they're trans, and also, like, and it affects them. But also, it was a UK-wide. It was pushed UK-wide. People just, like, are decent most of the time. And that's the thing. I mean, yeah, you mentioned the term TERF and, like, expanded, you know, trans exclusionary radical feminist. But here's the thing: if your feminism doesn't include trans people and trans women, it's not feminism. What you are, instead of a TERF, is a feminism appropriating radical transphobe. Which, you know what that acronym spells? Fart. Hey. Again, immature. That one stored in your brain. That was a good one to bring out. I've seen that. It was not me who came up with that. I could not remember and tell you who it is, but, like, I've had that just hanging around in the back of my brain. Actually, on that note, do you have the thing where if you know you're in a situation where you are being harassed, or you know you're gonna be, or you're gonna come up against something, do you kind of, like, have this thing where you're almost like, oh, I really want you to say a certain thing. Like, I want you to say a certain phrase because I have a comeback for that. Yes. Not enough. They always just use something really boring and like something that I just can't respond to. And I'm like, be a bit more exciting if you're going to harass me.
Yeah, like, come on, make this interesting.
Make it interesting. Like, if I'm just popping down to Tesco and I want a bit of excitement, you know, put an exciting, you know, slur at me. Not just like, I don't know, the F slur. Or like, calling me queer or something. Like, I know I'm queer. Like, or like the T slur. Like, I know. Say something more exciting.
Oh yeah, when people are like, oh, you're queer. It's like, yes, I'm queer. In other news, the world is round and the Pope is Catholic. Like,
yeah, war was where? Who knew?
Surprise? Really? Oh, thanks for telling me. Thanks for telling me. I'll take that information going forward.
And like like I think we're saying like we're trying to laugh about it because like that's literally what you can do. Like because.
If you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Yeah, like that's literally it. In Bristol, I do get harassed. I get shouted slurs at me, but on the whole, I know that nothing's going to come of that. I mean, I can laugh about that because in my hometown, on the contrary, I would hold hands with my partner at the time when we went home, and we would genuinely thought we were going to get beaten up because of how loudly people yelled at us and how violent it was. So, like, the reason I laugh at it is because in Bristol, like, although I will get called slurs, which is not fine, it's not fine at all. And, like, that's me as, like, a fairly privileged trans person, given, like, the colour of my skin and how able-bodied I am, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not to make light of it, but it's to try and make light of a very bad situation. And, like, at least I would rather have that than to be in my small hometown and thought I could possibly get murdered for holding my partner's hand. Yeah.
See, that's the thing. I mean, it's amazing seeing, like, how much things have changed and how far things have come. Like, really awesome thing. My hometown has, and you know what, I am actually going to mention them by name because the guy who runs this place, A, it's the place that's only an hour away from Bristol, and B, the guy who runs this place has done an awesome job on my mum's hair so many times. There's a gender-neutral hair salon called Our House. They put out there like, yeah, we are a completely gender-neutral hair salon. Everything we do price-wise is by how long your hair is, not by what your gender is. And it's really cool. Like, things are moving forward. And the thing about it is like the Gender Recognition Act, like coming back to it as a piece of legislation is from 2004, right?
I was 6.
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, yeah, I would have been 6 or 7, I think. Our understanding of gender, the world's understanding of gender, and the society's understanding of gender has come so far in that time.
In 2004, the internet barely existed.
Yeah.
And, like, if you think about it, like, in, like, 4 or 5 years ago, you used to see, like, the term trans with a star next to it. Because that was seen as the most inclusive way to include all trans and gender diverse people. Now that's not used as much, and that's just a couple of years ago. And that's how quickly stuff moves on. And like, the law is always slow to catch up, but like, this is embarrassing. Like,
yeah,
government, this is embarrassing. Like, I am cringing at you because it's embarrassing at how slow and how, just out of touch.
Well, and this is the thing. I've definitely mentioned before, like, this country is going to lose talented trans people as a result of it. People who do have, the privilege to do so are going to leave. And I did see, I feel like it was somewhere on Pink News, somewhere's done, like, a study of trans people and saying, like, like, a proportion of people are wanting to leave the country.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, it's not...
I'll link it.
It's not the first time I've messaged Lowie going, let's just fuck it all off and move to New Zealand.
Yeah, totally.
It's, and...
Are you okay?
Yeah. You're alright. Like,
no, I'm good. I love getting a bit fired up on a Friday.
No, so do I. Like,
but it is exhausting. Like, I would be like, oh, that's so depressing.
That's the thing. And also... Sometimes I do feel a little bit bad for sort of, the people around me, the people I love, particularly when, where we've been in lockdown, it's just been me and my partner in the house, like, so much time. Well, I'll see something on, like, I'll just be flicking through Twitter while he gets enough caffeine in him to converse like a human. But, I'll just be flicking through Twitter and you know, and then suddenly I'm angry. You know, or I'll be scrolling through Instagram, scrolling through the news, and I'll just hear something and be like, and just really suddenly loudly, just like, oh, for fuck's sake, like, and it's, I don't know, and it's, I keep saying, and there's just, it gets to a certain point where, like, how much do you add? And I don't, and also there are so many things that I see gendered, and it's like, why the hell is this gendered? Like, I've definitely mentioned the individual portaloos when there's, like, climbing place and stuff like that, and it's like, and it's things like that, it's like, it just gets frustrating. It's just, and the thing about it is it hurts cis people as well, because, you know, there are people who are cis but, like, want to explore their gender in, like, a different way, or, like, you know,
might want to wear a dress or something.
Yeah,
if they're aiming.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally understand that. I mean, like, you know, I don't have a wang, but, like, I imagine that's very, you know, flowy and free for someone who does, you know, who does possess that particular set of equipment, you know, and, you know, it makes, it forces, when you force these boxes in, it hurts everyone, and it's, you know, you get, like, cis guys talking about, like, oh, you know, feminism is hurting, you know, like, feminism is causing, you know, all these issues. It's like, no, feminism isn't causing issues for cis guys. Like, patriarchal setups are causing issues for cis guys. We are just bitching about trans things at this point, but, like, that's so much of what we do. But the thing about it is...
We're tired.
I've run out of words on that one, honestly.
Give us recognition, government, please.
Yeah, just, like... We're here. We're not going to stop existing just because, like...
You try and ignore us.
Yeah, we're not going to stop existing just because you try and ignore us. And, yeah, we're not going to stop. We're just going to get louder and queerer, like...
Yeah, like, I don't understand what you're trying to achieve, Hans.
Maybe we'd shut up about it if you just recognise us as human beings. Like, God, we wouldn't have to scream about it all the time. Oh, and this is the thing that does frustrate me, right? You were saying earlier about, oh, you know, we're in the position that, like sort of cis gay people were maybe 20 years ago, you know, 20, 30 years ago. We as trans people are kind of in that position now. I don't want to waste my youth on this. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I've got so many other bigger issues. Like, I'd rather stop the planet combusting and, like, help, like, I don't know, support my black friends. And, you know, like, I'm tired, like...
You know, we're both in our early 20s, and this is supposed to be, like, the best time in our lives, although that's a whole, like, concept which has issues of its own, really. But we are the youngest we will ever be, right? At any given moment, we are the youngest we will ever be. And I'd quite like to just be young. You know, I'd quite like to just be... I'd quite like to just be. Really, that's it.
Cool. So now we're going to talk to the amazing Travis. They're going to introduce themselves, say a little bit about them and their pronouns and all that.
Hi, I'm Travis Alabanza. I'm a writer, theatre maker, performer, and that's it. And I live in Bristol. And my pronouns are them, they. Sorry, I always forget that bit. Why? Which is ironic, isn't it?
I can do everything else except for the pronouns. And I'm like, wait, how long does that stand for?
Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah.
So, I mean, how are you doing today, Travis? Like, how are you?
I just did a piano lesson with my friend's kid. And so I'm like registering my voice back to talking like a adult again. But it was fun. We learned about notes, and we've been trying to crack how to learn notes for a while, and we finally did it, and they did really well. So I'm excited.
Yes. I love kids thriving. Like, that's my favourite thing, especially in the arts. Love to see it.
Yeah, and it's like with piano and stuff, you don't want to like squash out the fun, but then like the small, like, I get a bit conservative when it comes to teaching piano. I'm like, what? And I'm like, they need to learn the notes. They need to learn the notes. And I'm like, no, we just want to sing Mary Lad a Little Lamb. I'm like, no, but learn the notes. And we finally did it. So it's a good day. It's a good day.
It's sort of finding the balance between those, like, sort of two things about, like, find the balance between like, okay, you know, like learning sort of the technical side of things, but also like the joy of music, which is sort of the biggest kind of thing of it, really. Because if you don't have that joy, you can't do anything else. But also you need the technical kind of the knowledge of it.
And then remembering they're like 5, so I should chill out, you know? And like, no, I will make a prodigy. It's like, calm down. No,
like, you don't have to be yourself at 5. Like me, I need to be a musical prodigy. I need to be in a band by the age of 10.
Yeah, like, legit.
No, that wasn't helpful.
Yes. Well, I mean, the first thing is, the reason we've got you here, Travis, is that your show, Overflow, is being brought to the Bristol Vic. So, I mean, could you tell people a little bit more about Overflow? Because I think you're the best person to explain it, really.
Yeah. Well, it's being brought to your Vic, but I don't really know how it works because it's an online digital tour. So it's kind of like, well, we were all at home watching it anyway, but I let the theatre people call it whatever they want to call it and we move it on, you know. But yeah, Overflow is a play about bathrooms. I'd written it during lockdown. It premiered at the Bush Theatre starring Rhys Lyons, who's incredible, have an incredible debut on the stage with this. And basically it follows Rosie, like 20-something-year-old trans girl who has found herself trapped in a bathroom trying to escape harassment. And in order to calm herself down or deal with the tension, she kind of takes us through her life, but only through the point of view of toilets. So all the different moments that have punctuated her life in bathrooms. Yeah. And so it's about nightlife, friendship, transphobia, and the West Country a bit, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think, like, so I've seen it. I know Kit hasn't, so it's quite,
cool.
Like, yes, it's quite nice to have those, like, two, like, different, unique perspectives. Because, yeah, I absolutely loved it and still can't stop thinking about it. And also Rhys is incredible. Like,
yeah, right? And, like, her first, like, stage debut, I'm like, gag. I could never.
No, right? Like, I'm like, can I sit down and get a coffee with you? Because you seem amazing. Yeah, so incredible, and I think so interesting to bring up as well, like, you know, obviously we have bathroom going on and on, that just keeps happening, but also, like, as trans people, that idea of, like, does the art we make have to be trans, and, like, have to be that political all the time? And I think actually the way of exploring it via, like, a one-person show and through stories and that whole life story as part, other than just, like, this is a play that's set in a bathroom. It explores bathrooms.
Yeah.
More interesting.
Yeah, and it's like, so like I think like some stuff, I hope I'll get some stuff on stage that isn't so like directly on the nose, you know, like putting a trans person in a bathroom, da-da-da-da. But I was like, it's all about the brief for me, right? And it's like when Bush, who are like, you know, quite a well-known theatre, right respected, say, we want you to open up the theatre after this many months off. You kind of think as an artist, I didn't think my next show was going to be like so closely after Burgers, so linked to the political conversation around transness. I kind of almost didn't want it to be. But then this opportunity comes up and you go, okay, but what's the statement of opening a theatre up in London and them heading it with this show, a trans woman cast, this theme, in this moment where like, despite us all being inside for 12 months, transphobia has been a consistent that has not stopped, you know? And so you weigh it up as an artist, I think, sometimes. And this time, the political conversation was worth that kind of dive in, you know?
Mm. I mean, how many of sort of the kind of the stories and experiences that, you know, you have Rosie talking about as a character, how much of that comes from any sort of personal kind of experiences that you might have faced, like, as a trans person?
Yeah, I think what was nice about Overflow is that Burgers was obviously all personal and it was all my own conversation and it was autobiographical. And like Rosie is like an amalgamation of myself and loads of the other trans feminine people in my life. And some of her like the stuff that's actually the least trans specific is the stuff that comes from my life directly in the story of Overflow. But Rosie herself is actually like, yeah, a combination. And so I found it a lot easier to write because there wasn't this idea of truth that was like hanging over like facts. It was like, this stuff happens, but actually what can I make Rosie like fun? You know, like I don't want to give spoilers or stuff, but like I found in those side characters that Rhys transforms into is where there was so much freedom of making up this character. So I can make up this like best friend that's this cis woman that's kind of over the top and she's an amalgamation of all these others. So Yeah, but the West Country references are definitely specific to my life.
I can't even remember the one about the bridge.
Oh, like, we'll do the line. She says, okay. What did she say? She goes, oh, no, damn it. I was going to go to the line. I can't. Something like, my broad shoulders, only thing I got from my dad, used to son of a prick stick. I got shoulders broader than the Clifton suspension bridge or something like that. I don't know.
I love it. Truly iconic. But I also love, like, this is, again, just me gushing about Reese, but, like Reese and the writing just together, I'm like, truly incredible. But, like, jumping into those characters, especially that cis best friend role, and I think that was such a good representation of so many of my cis friends. Of, like, you're great, but, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you actually doing to help other than being like, it's okay, you're trans? It's okay? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I know it's okay. Like...
Yeah. I think it's that. It's always about, like, being realistic about who comes to your show. And I think some shows I go to, and this is no tea, like, if they want to give this, like, it's respectful for what they want to do, but it's not what I want to do. Like, sometimes I go to shows and it's like shouting at this person that realistically actually isn't going to be in your show's audience. And so for me with this, it was like, actually, I can do that simultaneously, but let me bring the character that's having conflict inside, that's someone that's much more realistic to be in a liberal theatre audience. That cis woman who votes left, she says she supports trans rights, she might even have her pronouns in her bio, but, like, is still insufferable. I wanted to, like, create that character because theatre sometimes like to watch things and distance themselves from, like, who you're challenging, and, like, my work tries to, like, challenge me and the other people around, you know?
When you were writing it, did you write specifically with Reese in mind, or were those two things, the casting and the writing, quite separate processes?
Yes, really separate. I had written it with I'd written it with no one in mind, I guess, but I'd written it with a few people that I, like, know of in the scene and their kind of vibe, and found out, like, quite, like, 1 week on in the writing process that she was out because she was having surgery. And so then it was like, okay, this is open call for this character. And so we did an open call. And the casting process became actually, like, for me, my biggest learning lesson from the thing, because we did a social media post, which, like, no one else really wanted to do, but you wouldn't normally do it for, like, a show, you know, and we opened it up so that we had open calls from trans people of all ages. I was willing to edit the age of the character if we found, like, an amazing 55-year-old trans girl. And it was great because you had, like, people that had acting experience, not people that had acting experience, some people that, like, we had a few people that worked in hospitals that were like, I've always tried acting, like, sending in their tape. And so we could build this list. And I did fall in love with Reese when I first saw her audition. But I was then determined to have a callback, like a normal process. Because I think sometimes what happens in the industry with trans-specific stuff is that we don't get the same rigor. Well, we have to fight to get in. But sometimes when it's like, sometimes when I speak to trans people, what they miss is, like, just getting in the process like everyone else. A callback, feedback, a harsh audition, not a harsh audition, but, like, an audition process where the next day you'll get a note, like, you know, and so we wanted to really give that. So it actually just felt like a regular audition process that just happened to be with 50 trans people, you know? But it was great because the casting directors and some I've spoken to in previous jobs before, if you said, oh, we're trying to find 50 trans girls, they'd go, that doesn't exist. And they give you the same names. And what was so great about this process is working with Bryony, the casting person, she was really open to being like, I'm willing to be proved wrong. And so we found so many great people auditioning that I hope will now appear in, you know, now I'm writing some new stuff that's group work and group stuff. And what's great is now I'm already like, oh, well, I can call them back in for an audition. I can call them in for an audition. Or my friend texted me the other day and said, I'm writing a show with 4 trans people in it. Do you know some people? And I'm like, here's a list of everyone. So it was really good, the casting process.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting as well what you were saying about, like, just having a normal process. Like, I think we've been just talking about, like, the GRA, really, like, light stuff for a Friday morning. But just saying that although it could sound like we're just banging on about trans stuff all the time, it's because, like, we just want it to be easy so that we can continue to live our lives. Like, I don't want my life to be a political statement. The reason it is because I want younger kids and other trans people and the people that don't have the same privileges that I do to, like, not have to fight as hard and not have to, just to have a better life. And it's that. So, why would we chatting about the GRA for an hour? It's because we don't want to have difficult processes. Like, we don't want to be those odd ones out.
And we want to be legally recognised. I mean, as non-binary people, like, that's just not something we have right now at all. And yeah, like, it just wanting to be... It's that thing of, oh, we don't want, like, special treatment. We just want to do normal things. Yeah, and creating that within the theatre space, which very traditionally can be very, very closed off in a lot of ways. And I think, yeah, having a network now that you've created this really awesome network, it seems, of trans actors, that's a really, really awesome thing. And that's something we desperately need, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I say to, like, anyone, you know, everyone's got their own networks. I'm sure there's so many different places and spaces of trans people in the arts doing these things. And so I just always say it in the interview so that if someone else is listening, they can email me and go, do you have that list of actors? And I can go, here you go, you know, as long as it's a paid role. I had some people being like, oh, I want them for... I'm like, just double checking, is this a paid professional job? Because these were all professional level actors, you know? And I think it's about broadening what we see as experience, right? Like, what the process reminded me, and I already knew this, but I needed a reminder, it's like, if you're looking for trans feminine, specifically trans feminine people in this case, if you're looking for trans feminine people in these roles and you're only going to drama schools, then you're going to come up short. Not that there isn't trans feminine people in drama schools, but actually what this open search did is we had dancers, we had people that worked in strip clubs, we had mums, and they all could perform. Because they are used to doing a lot of, like, you know, right? Like, sex workers are some of, like, the most skilled performers I know. And what it reminded me is that, like, you've got to keep on reminding yourself, even if you get further and further into industry, to not be bogged down by what the industry decides is how you do things. Because we as trans people always have different roots in, you know?
Yeah, totally. And, like, I think it's like somewhat like nice and also really depressing to hear like that, and like having in my industry, which I guess you could call journalism. I applied to do the NCTJ the other day, which was like the proper training course for journalists, and they were like, oh, so we normally wouldn't take people that haven't been to university. Why haven't you been to university? And I was like, well, I couldn't afford it. Also, I'm trans. Also, I'm mentally ill. Also, neurodiverse. Like, why is it so exhausting? Like every single industry, I'm trying like really hard not to swear, but like every single industry is the same. It mirrors it. And if that's, let trans people in your spaces. I don't know. I don't have a big like thought on that. Just like let trans people in.
And widen what the experience counts as. Because, you know, putting you next to university students, you probably have a wider portfolio of writing, a wider coverage, proof that you can deliver time and time again and do journalism. It's kind of more impressive to have made like writing in space and journalism without the like networking that university gives. Yeah. So to me, it's like the joy as an employer. I want that. Like for me, when I'm building a show, I'm like, yeah, sure, drama school shows a certain amount of development and da-da-da. But if I'm looking at a performer that has this amount of charisma, da-da-da-da, without training, then I'm like, oh, great, come through, you know?
Right.
Well, and this is the thing, again, yeah, particularly drama school. It's frustrating when I you know, when I'm applying for sort of jobs and stuff in places, and it's like, you know, you explain yourself as well as you can on paper and as well as you can in a CV, but it's like, oh, if you just got me in an interview, if you just sat me down, I could, you know, I could show you. If you just sit down and talk to me, and yeah, and going sort of, it is frustrating that, you know, sort of the letters and the letters on the page sometimes just matter so much, and you can filter out really good people because of things like that. And I think that's especially true sort of in the acting world, where, you know, drama school is, I mean, yeah, I went through the whole audition process for drama schools when I was 18. Like it's a whole thing.
I bet.
Wouldn't it just be great if like these artistic spaces that queer people thrive so much in were like actually accessible? Like what a concept! I would love that.
Wow. Like for real.
Imagine it.
Thinking about sort of you know, Bristol and things like that. I mean, how have you sort of just generally, I guess, Travis, your experience of being like a queer creative in Bristol? Because I think Bristol does have a really good scene for it, but I think there's also a lot of work to be done. I mean, how would you sort of describe your experience just as being a queer creative in Bristol?
I don't know the Bristol creative scene. That's what I want to say. I feel like I've publicly said I'm moving back, and everyone's going, Travis, Bristol Creative. And I feel a bit shady, or like I could feel the shade coming back to me, because I feel like the Bristol Creative's like, this bitch hasn't been around. And it's kind of true. Like, I went to London from like 18. Like, I grew up in Bristol, and I had some of my first, like, obviously taste of creativity from Bristol. So like traveling light, before I'm about to slate Bristol for when I'm growing up. So before I do that, I name the places that were like actually sick. And Travelling Light, you know, was my first instance of creativity in Bristol. They're like a theatre company in Barton Hill. And they did sessions when I was there. I don't know what the prices are now, but it was like £2 a session. So for me, as like someone, I couldn't afford old Bristol Vic, and I didn't get the scholarship for Bristol Vic when I was younger. And so I said to my mum, I was like, but I need to go to drama school. And my mum was so stressed out because she's like, there's no money to do that. And she found Travelling Light, and I had the best time. Like, it taught me, but at the time I didn't realize how much it was teaching me. But now going into theatre spaces, I'm like, that was kind of my education. Even though it was like, every other week for like 4 years. Sometimes I'd skip out, sometimes I'd not. And it was so great. And at the time, Jen Camlin was like the youth person that was running it. And she would bring in all these artists that were like, now as an artist, I can see what they were doing. They were like, you know, because I get brought in to do these kind of workshops. But at the time you're a kid, you're just like, wow, this person like dances for a living. Oh my God. And you're like, oh my God, I'm meeting a dancer. And so I had that was such a creatively like freeing space. And it was weird. They let kids make weird work. Like, we were doing like weird, abstract, physical theatre stuff. But I'm 9, I don't know all the words. But now, again, looking back on it, understanding theatre, I'm like, wow, we were doing some weird-ish. So I love Travelling Light, and I always want to shout them out. And I just think they're great. And I can't wait to go visit when it's safe to do so in person. I would say that why I left for London is because I didn't feel creatively held by the city at the time. I think obviously coming back now, it's different. I come back with certain access and privilege that a platform gives you, or a few shows behind you give you. So it's a lot easier as a creative to go make space. But at 18, I was desperately trying to be an artist here. And I was desperately trying to get given spaces. And no one just didn't really feel like anyone understood me. It was a very different time, even though I'm not old, but like, you know, even 7, 8 years ago, I was still talking about the identities I'm talking about now. And it was before this kind of turn of moment where suddenly you could talk about being Black and queer together, or suddenly you could talk about sex and transness and be a bit rude. And so I'd go to this open mic on Stokes Croft that was called the Arts House. It's not there anymore. Yeah.
I know the one. I used to live basically opposite there, actually.
Oh, sick! Yeah, I live like near there now, and I lived there before when I was there. I used to go like once every Thursday, and I'd bring my friend from sixth form, and we'd go and I'd do these like bold performance art pieces, and everyone would just kind of go. And it would be like no one understood it, and I was like, "Where's the shit that's queer? Where's the stuff that's happening?" And so I did find it hard, but now I'm just looking forward to things feeling more open, because I feel ready to like figure out the creative scene now as a new person. I feel new back to it. And so I'm looking forward to finding out, what is it like as you two, as creative people? That's what I want to know.
Oh, yeah. So I moved here 3 years ago, and it's massively changed even in that. But then I also think I have access and kind of privilege in knowing what's going on in a way that I might not otherwise know, because I am this LGBTQ+ editor. People come to me and I know them, and I will know of these new spaces up and coming, and I will know, which is incredible. And it's incredible to know that so much has come in the past 3 years I had no idea about when I came here, and don't think existed mostly. But I think we say this a lot on this podcast, but there just needs to be more. There's a lot that's like their party spaces or mental health support. And I want some weird art. I want strange drag. I want the weird stuff. Give me weird queer shit.
Where are you both from before Bristol? Or are you from Bristol?
So I grew up there, about an hour outside Bristol. So I grew up there. And, was always, spending a lot of time in Bristol growing up, particularly going to gigs. My parents would always send me to gigs. Moved there 18 for uni, did my undergrad, did my master's. And I wonder, hearing from you guys, hearing your experiences talking about, so obviously I had a lot going on in the Bristol sort of creative scene and queer scene. It's where I had my whole queer awakening. and my whole gender awakening. I wonder, though, in terms of hearing the way you guys talk about sort of the creative scene in Bristol, I worry sometimes that I'm like romanticizing it a little bit.
But that's okay. Oh my God, stay in the romanticizing. I think we don't romanticize enough. I think there's so much things to be that feel unromantic about our experiences. So when you find a space that feels romantic, feel it. Feel the fantasy. I'm in a bit of a romantic stage of Bristol right now that all my friends are like trying to pinch through. Where I'm walking around, I'm like, I feel like I'm in a village. I feel like I'm walking around and bumping into all these old people that know me and, you know, like old friends that used to, it's very rose tinted, but it's romantic and we need that. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited for it to open back up because I personally am not good at I have no interest in building community through workshops or those kind of things. That's someone else's kind of bag. That's not my vibe. I'm a club girl. I feel at home building community through nights. And so I'm obviously not going to come back to my hometown and suddenly own a night. I'm going to wait and see. But if nothing crops up, I want to run a night. I want to run a night. Yeah. Because here's the thing. I've not said this out loud yet, but just hearing it, I'm like, here's the tea, right? When I used to run nights, I had no money, no platform, no access to funding, nothing. And I was a shoestring, paying everyone 20 quid and shouting from the rooftops, hoping someone would turn up. Now I feel, not to boot my own horn, but I do feel like if I ran a night, some people would turn up. And so I'm like, bish, and a venue would be really happy to have us. And you Trojan horse it in. So you Trojan horse, you say, oh yeah, I'm going to do this little queer night. And then you bring the most sordid performance art. And then you're like, that's what I want to do. I just get to party. Because how do you make friends in this? Because I'm also coming back to Bristol and God, I'm sorry, I'm going on. But London, you know, I had loads and loads of friends because I've lived there since I was 18, kind of had my queer awakening there. Well, I had my queer awakening here in Bristol, but had my growth. I came back to Bristol and I've got my friends that I've known for my whole life and we're really close, but we're all steady, we're a bit you know, going into the steady vibes. I want to make more new friends. But I haven't had to make friends since I was 19. And so the way to do that is from a club night, you know?
Oh yeah, 100%. But if you want recommendations off the top of my head, once everything opens up, I'd go to Scritch Cabaret, which is at Old Market Assembly. That's just got some weird drag stuff. I love that. Anything by Bristol Boys, Punker.
Yeah.
And Don't Tell Your Mother. Those are the ones. But I mean, I think everyone knows of those, but just to reiterate, we love them.
Yeah. No, I've been to Don't Tell Your Mother. I went in a costume and no one knew I was there. It was really nice. I feel like we've gone on a biggest sidetrack, haven't we? I don't know where the interview started.
I don't know. I try and not think about how many queer people in Bristol have seen me drunk, but I've also written about professionally. See me completely off my tits. And then I'm also hi, so I'm Lowie from Bristol24.
Well, anyone that's seen me perform has seen me drunk off my tits. You know, burgers, they think it's really composed. I'm like, yeah, there's a reason there's a built-in bar in that set.
Right, I was going to say there's a built-in bar.
I love. Oh my God.
Kit, do you want to try and steer this back? Because I don't know if I can.
I'm trying. I'm trying. Okay, right. This is a really wide open and very general question, but I'm really curious. What would you personally like cis people to know about the trans experience? You know, what do you wish cis people knew? Yeah, about the trans experience, about trans life. I know that's a really wide open question.
Yeah.
Curious.
True me, when I get asked a question like this, I like to think of the most provocative answer possible.
Go for it.
Do it.
I guess I'd like them to probably think that they're probably more trans than they think. And I mean that their distance from us, getting to know us in relation to distance and difference and how we're all different is actually you know, sometimes people, the liberal kind of thing to say is we're all different, we should respect everyone. And I go, actually, maybe you find us so uncomfortable because you're very much closer to us than you think. And so I guess what I wish everyone would know about the trans experience is that I think the binary of cis and trans is needed for clarification points and because of our rights, but in an ideal future would actually probably be far less harsh than it is right now. And that probably what you can learn from trans experience is that you should spend time interrogating your own gender and realizing what you're doing because you have to rather than what you want to do. and that actually you'd be less violent, less aggressive, less bothered if you spent time interrogating your own personal journey to gender. With the cis friends in my life, you know, I guess when I first came out when I was 17, but like when stuff started to be a bit more visible, and I'd get stuff on the streets, you know, there's the physical stuff that I need support with cis people, which is like, if I'm out and I'm being attacked, what do we do? If I'm da-da-da. But I don't need emotional support from cis people, because I don't need them to talk to me about my gender, because it won't do it. So a lot of my friends that are in my life, especially coming back to Bristol, like I have one cis straight friend left in my life, and he lives in Bristol. And he's a dear, dear friend of mine, and he's like a cis straight white guy. He's the only one I've got in my life, and I love him to bits. And I said to him, I was like, a couple of years ago, I was like, I don't need you to like do any learning up on me. I'm not going to give you that. Go to another trans person if you want that as your response. I need you to go away and interrogate your gender. I need you to go away and have just as much conversation that I'm having about my gender with yours and your own, and tell me what you come back with. And that has built a far more honest relationship with this person that I feel can now understand my dysphoria more. Not obviously to the whole point, but understands it more, because they can see where they have comfort and discomfort and imagine it heightened, where they've made small choices about their gender and been punished from a young age. They can then imagine what it feels like to have that every day. And so that's kind of my answer, long, convoluted, but like, I just find it more interesting, to be honest, than going, I wish they would know that we're this, I wish they would know that. I don't, because I've gone past the point of begging for any kind of like acceptance or understanding. I'm not interested. I actually am not interested in understanding. I don't need cis people to understand me. I need them to understand themselves. I need them to like check their own thing. I actually stop bothering me, you know, like, so like, I don't know, maybe there's some disagreement here and that, I don't know, but I'm not obsessed with them. It's like a thing.
You know, so you probably noticed I was just like, because that is a really amazing thing. But actually, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. Like, that is really quite cool.
No, I was going to say, that's why I love talking to trans people. You just, like, hear other trans people's, like, ways of thinking and being like, oh, man, that's so fascinating and I can use that.
Yeah, because I think there's this lie that's being built right now that trans people are, like, over here and cis people are here. And it's both from the effects of however many years of this prolonged media attack, but also our own, what happens when a community are under defence. And when communities are under defence, they launch onto definitions. We make ourselves hard aligned. We make ourselves more legible to the people oppressing us. So we say, we're being oppressed, we're being attacked. Well, let's make trans this really understandable thing. So out comes the infographics, out comes the definitions, out comes people going trans and non-binary, and out comes all the discussions about what's real trans or not real trans. Whereas trans has always been an umbrella term, there has always been all these things historically, But this new development, because we're under threat. And I also think what means that has happened is our politics have also lost the point of imagination, because rightfully so, we're under threat. And so all our conversations go around, how can we make things understandable for the cis person? And then we can't push it and go, trans people are just being honest. Maybe the binary is actually dishonest and honest, or avoidant and honest. And actually we're being honest, and we look at our gender and we go, and that is not to say every cis person is then going to change. I'm not saying that. That's not to say they're all trans. I'm not saying that for the clarification of the TERFs that listen to everything that I read and will take some of this information and whatever. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that this idea that only trans people go on journeys and self-discoveries is what keeps cisgender people away from empathizing, away from protecting, because they don't realize that as soon as we're more free, they will get more free too. As soon as there's a world where we're living out loud, because when we live out loud, we give them possibilities. There's a reason why Drag Race, and it's not trans, but there is gender non-conformity. There's a reason why straight men fantasize about dressing up in drag. And that is not to say they are trans. I'm making that very clear. But it is to say that so many people have fantasies around their gender that they never get to play out. And trans people are examples of going, I have something I want to do with my gender, and I'm going to have the guts to do it. Guts, because it's a gender-neutral genitalia term. And so that's what I think it is. And that's what I turn around to this person. I'm like, I'm not interested. I don't want to give you a pronoun infographic. I don't want you to tell me how to include me in your corporate job at work. I don't care about you putting a flag on your window. That's not the style. That's not my chance, you know? And that is not to shade other people. If they want to do that, that is fine. If that makes you feel good, that feels good. But for me, we've got lost because we're celebrating a trans flag on the MI5. Or we're celebrating a trans flag in the army. And I'm like, girl, they're killing that doesn't do anything for me, you know? Like, that's not it. Yeah. Sorry, I've ranted. I've only had water. I've only had water today.
Oh my God. I always find, I think I end up comparing, obviously they're very different things, but gender and sexuality and how we as trans people are existing, I think as a lot of queer and gay people existed a few decades ago, and actually how many of my friends who had grown up thinking they were straight were like, oh, actually, I think I'm a bit queer, just from like seeing me being proudly queer and out, and that just, I fucking love everyone. And then be like, oh, wait, hang on, maybe, hang on, I don't just like this one person, like one gender, because you don't. And like, when we're going to start doing that with transness? Like,
yeah,
you
exactly.
can't be what you can't see.
Well, exactly. And like, also there's always this idea that we've progressed because we like to think of like our timeline in Western world as like constantly getting better. And in some ways, obviously we have legally, But if you read how trans people were talking about themselves pre-Stonewall, if you look at the accounts of Marsha P, Sylvia Verrera, they weren't clinging on to this idea of legible womanhood. They weren't constantly saying, I'm a woman, I'm a woman. They were calling themselves a gay boy, a woman, a sissy, a faggot, a crossdresser, a transvestite. Those are all words that Marsha P had for herself, right? And what that reminds me is that she wasn't obsessed with being legible to the cisgender gays. She didn't spend all her time going, count me as a woman, count me as the same as you. She said, I'm this, and you're going to respect me no matter what. And that is always what I hold to, because now, obviously, the archive of Marsha P flattens out all the other words that she's used for herself, you know, and doesn't, because we're at a point in history where to understand a trans person, you have to either be male, female, or non-binary, as if this non-binary has become this third option box, right? Instead of saying, actually, some of these people we're calling a woman were also a woman and also this and also that, because they didn't care, or they did care so much that they expanded. And I just think I used to be in my career and in my interviews, in my practice, so obsessed with making sure I was watertight and I gave the right answer that was the right thing, that everyone would keep everyone safe, and that as a trans person with whatever public platform, it was my duty to make sure I gave the non-profit tagline answer. And I realised, well, what the hell is the point of me being an artist? What is the point if I can't say what I actually want to say? I am not responsible for anyone, and push something out somewhere, you know?
Yeah, this is the thing. And yeah, being our complete authentic selves as wonderful, beautiful, awesome human beings, but also messy human beings, and human beings who, you know, make mistakes and do all sorts of things just like anyone else. I think trans people are often kind of held to standards that are quite sort of different and difficult. And I think people, and asking cis people to interrogate themselves and say, you know, what aspects of your gender presentation, your understanding of yourself are things that, you know, you're performing because society has told you to, and what things are things that actually matter to you. I think that is a huge thing and something I'd never really considered before. So thank you hugely for that.
All on a Friday. Are we on Friday? Are we on Friday?
Yeah,
all on a Friday. All on a Friday morning.
I know.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Cool.
I have the dates, unless you have the dates. When overflow's up.
Oh.
Shall I just? I was just going to try and bring it back. So
yes, let's put back to overflow before we go.
Let's sort of wrap up here.
So thank you so much for coming to chat with us. We've chatted about a lot. This has just been a whole episode of us talking about trans stuff. So
which is
enjoy.
Awesome.
But overflows at the Bristol Vic on the 6th, 7th and 8th of May. So you can find all the details on the Bristol Vic website. So we'll link that all below.
Also, Travis, I guess if people want to, you know, find you, follow you online, what are your social handles and things if people are trying to find you and the awesome things that you do?
If they want to follow me, they're going to have to find it. I'm not giving it away.
Fair enough.
No, I mean, just throw a stone and you'll find me somewhere on social media.
Lush. Well, thank you so much for coming and chatting to us. This has been a really, really awesome time. Thank you so much. The most love right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was so fun.
That was so much fun. Yeah, I guess now we're sort of at the end of this. If I'm going a bit quiet and weird right now, that's just because, so much of the stuff that, Travis was saying is genuinely mind-blowing in the best possible way. Really, really awesome. Things to really, really think about.
Yeah.
One thing that I really sort of wanted to say, so pal of mine has started a really, really awesome Facebook group for trans people, exclusively for trans and non-binary people in Bristol, called Bristol. It's Bristol Trans * non-binary community, exclusively for trans and trans, non-binary, gender fluid, agender folks in and around Bristol, all with sort of a connection to Bristol. It's a really, really lovely, positive space, exclusively for, trans people with sort of a connection to Bristol. And I just wanted to shout it out because it's a really, really lovely, positive space. And I think, the more people sort of join into it, the better. So find that on Facebook, join that. Really, really lovely, positive, awesome stuff. Lowie, wrap us on up.
Yeah, it's been a morning.
It has been a morning.
We recorded this on a Friday morning about 10 till midday, and I'm mind blown still. Gonna go and have a coffee after this. I don't know about you, Kit.
I think I will. Yes.
Yeah, but thank you so much for listening. Thank you again to the amazing Travis.
My name is Kit Million Ross.
And my name's Lowie Trevina.
This has been the Bristol 24/7 Queer Catch-Up. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and we will see you in a fortnight.
See you in a fortnight.